Todd, guess what I found? I found my old pleather jacket so we can match. Pretty good, right? In all seriousness though, this room is really freaking hot, so I'm not gonna do this. I think that's a bad idea. I'll start sweating and I'll look all sticky in the video. I mean, I guess I already kind of look sticky. It's the hair. It's the hair, isn't it? Anyway, so at times getting through Assassin's Creed Valhalla can seem and feel like a real trudge. The game is massive, and thanks to many of the bizarre design choices, there are 5 to 15 hour stretches that can feel like you're just checking off boxes. It was a design choice that was made to buck the stereotype of Ubisoft copy and pasted content, but instead it just made it all the worse. But that's not what we're here to discuss today. I do have a massive critique of Valhalla in the works. It'll be out in the next couple of weeks. It's massive, it's sexy, it's awesome. If you want to find out why it's taken so long to get out and why it'll be out soon, check out this, wherever it is, personal update rambling video I did, in case you're interested. But regardless, Valhalla is massive. There's a lot of quests, a lot of content, a lot of stories, and a lot of XP to be had. And in this video, I'm going to explain to you how something Ubisoft did to try and simplify the process of completing the game actually completely breaks it. In fact, it breaks the game so severely and completely that I am baffled there aren't warning labels and all sorts of crap all over this thing when you start to use it. But before we get into that, a quick thank you to the sponsor of this video, without whom it wouldn't be possible, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community for every kind of learner. Whether you're looking to improve your photography, video editing skills, or painting, Skillshare has the classes to help you achieve your goals. I, for one, really struggle with time management, making sure that I can get these videos out in a timely manner. For this reason, I searched Skillshare for some classes to help me with productivity, and I found Productivity for Creatives by Thomas Frank. In this course, he basically explains that productivity is like a muscle. You have to exercise it and keep on it, and he shares lots of exercises to help you do just that. And I can personally attest, it works. I've also taken a ton of classes to help me improve my editing skills in Premiere Pro, my software of choice, Photoshop to improve thumbnails, and even writing to help with scripts. Truly, regardless of what skill you're trying to refine and improve, Skillshare likely has the courses taught by industry professionals to help you do just that. And as if all of this wasn't awesome enough, Skillshare is offering a deal to the first 1,000 viewers of mine that click on the link in the description box below. If you click that link, they're going to give you a free trial of their premium service. You'll have access to all of these courses and more. And all of this for under $10 a month. Just click the link in the description box or in the pinned comment to check it out. So, to understand just how this particular game feature breaks the game itself, you need to understand something very key to Valhalla. You see, the level scaling here is a lot more minute compared to almost any other action RPG that you could possibly name. In most games, you'll play to roughly level 50 or maybe 100 over the course of 50 or so hours, and that's a pretty good scale and pace, I think. This means that roughly every hour or so, you will level up, gaining the ability to place an ability token or to apply skill points to change how your character performs out in the world. I know this is all very bare bones and simplistic, but it's going to be important later when we compare what Valhalla does, because it's not normal. You see, Assassin's Creed Valhalla doesn't do this at all. Instead, for some reason, they decided that it would be better to have 350 of these levels, each of which has a very small impact on the player character and gameplay. Furthermore, they decided to add 2 skill points into your coffer every time you hit certain XP checks instead of just 1. This means that instead of leveling up once every hour or so, with that actually meaning something and having a noticeable effect and impact on gameplay, they decided to use micro levels that have almost no noticeable effect. At least if you're focusing on main story quests that tend to award a lot of XP. Now, a small sin like this might not be that big of a deal. After all, maybe you just suck it up and deal with it. But the whole thing really starts to stink when you look at the game as a whole. As I've said 3 times in this video already, Assassin's Creed Valhalla is massive. It's a game that often is criticized for its length. Hell, the overarching theme of my critique will likely be that it's a decent game that's twice as long as it needs to be. As a result of this excessive length, the game designers did a lot of things that I think harm the overall experience. Because applying all of these skill points, 2 every 20 minutes or so, would get extremely tedious over the course of a 50 to 75 hour run, they decided to add an auto assign button. This makes it so every time you level up, you don't even need to select where the points go. You just select this central button and it automatically assigns the points for you. This effectively just makes the game into a standard action title. Leveling up increases damage output, stamina, resistances to certain effects, and might even grant you some new abilities. You could select what abilities you gain, I guess, but towards the end of your run, you'll likely be so sick and tired of sifting through all of these small skill nodes that you're probably just going to say screw it and have it auto-assign. But that's just one example, and I don't think that's the worst offender. The worst offender, by far, and the one that is the titular topic of this video, is the XP boost. Now, just to explain myself, whenever I do a critique of a game, I try to push it as hard as I can. That means testing every single system within it to see if it crumbles underneath the pressure. And I usually do this because I'm hoping that the developers will have tested these systems at least somewhat to make sure that the experience is still balanced regardless of which of these approaches you take. But this XP boost in Assassin's Creed Valhalla has to be the most egregious example of a poorly tested, poorly thought out, poorly executed, and slimy gameplay feature I have ever seen. First of all, you have to pay for it. Now, full disclosure, my first knee-jerk reaction is not to immediately dismiss this thing because it's a gameplay feature and element that's locked behind a DLC or paywall. A game like Dying Light has a lot of paid DLC, but I would argue that for the most part, that DLC adds to the gameplay experience. It may allow you or even encourage you to take shortcuts around a lot of the game's exploration, perhaps tainting the experience by way of coddling you, but I don't think it breaks the game. In other words, I think there are ways that DLC can be done where it feels fair and doesn't necessarily ruin the original experience. However, this XP boost, it completely breaks Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Like, completely. But how do I prove this? Well, I've tested the XP boosts in other recent Assassin's Creed games, whether Syndicate, Origins, Odyssey, or now Valhalla. I've tried all of them. The general idea behind these XP boosts is that they alter the experience point output by such an amount that you can effectively bypass most side content. This means that if you want to just blast through the main story, you can do that. Any side content that you want to go back and enjoy will probably be extremely easy for you since you effectively scaled as though you had already completed it, but for the most part, it serves a purpose. Gamers that don't have a lot of time and just want to blast through the main story of a franchise entry that they enjoy can pay $5 or so to do so. And as insane as that may sound to some of us who play games in their entirety and put dozens upon dozens of hours into them, there are people out there for whom this makes a lot of sense. I mean, we can rant and rave, tell them that they're wrong, explain that they're ruining the experience for themselves, and that might be true, but it doesn't change the fact that this is the only way those people likely would be able to experience the game at all. And maybe then the question is, great, it fits for some people, why do they lock it behind a paywall then? Well, this is something I can actually forgive a little bit. We're starting to teeter on the edge, but I think there is an argument for it being behind a paywall. You see, I'm a firm believer that gamers will typically take the path more traveled. If there's a system, mechanic, item, or feature that makes the game easier or more efficient, they will use it, especially in a game that most people agree is overbloated. If the XP boost were available to everybody, I think the majority of people would use it to get through the main story faster, because after all, most people agree that it takes too long to finish. However, being locked behind a paywall, only those that really see the value or the need for this boost will use it. It's cheap enough that I don't think it's completely unreasonable, and it gives a little kickback to the developers, something that I think is justifiable or even good in a lot of cases. But all of that is only true if the rest of the game doesn't suffer as a result of this monetization scheme. And unfortunately, Assassin's Creed Valhalla seems to lean into it just a little too much. You see, this has been a conspiracy theory for a long time. That Ubisoft intentionally makes these games excessively big just so that they can encourage players to use this boost. And I think that for a long time, this conspiracy theory has been just that, a conspiracy theory. I don't think this XP boost is making ridiculous amounts of money for Ubisoft. I think it's just a small offering on the side. But let's get specific. How exactly do they make the game worse by relying and leaning on this feature? Well, because I'm sure in all of the development meetings when they were talking about scaling back the scope of the game, discussing any concerns about the game being too big and bloated, all of those concerns could easily be dismissed and hand-waved away by simply saying, well, if they're really that concerned about it, if the players don't like the amount of content we're putting in, they can just buy the XP boost and skip it or not play at all. And the result is a game that's so wide and so thin that it doesn't give anybody anything to really sink their teeth into. It's all just flat and bland. It really is the junk food of gaming. But this isn't the only issue, that the XP boost gives developers an excuse to bloat the game up to an unreasonable level. The bigger issue is that this XP boost wasn't tested at all. You see, it doesn't just sidetrack the side content. It does so much more. And I really think this is because Valhalla decided to get rid of side quests for a reason that I still don't know. Like, really, if you have any theories or have interviews or something that explains why they decided to get rid of side content, tell me. They replaced it all with these little micro events in the world that last for 5 minutes or less. Like, it's so weird to me. It seems like such a stupid design choice, and I cannot figure out why. I've been thinking about it for months. I can't figure it out. So if you have any theories, let me know in the comment section below or tweet me at LukeStevensTV. I'm honestly interested because I'm so completely baffled. You see, because Ubisoft decided to get rid of side quests, it's really hard to judge just how much of this smaller side content the player will actually engage with. As a result, the XP output for completing each of these various tasks varies wildly. While some may only give you 500 XP, others can give you thousands. This means that there is no reasonable way to balance this XP boost such that it bypasses the side content, allowing you to blast through just the main story. The result is that the XP boost, which increases XP output for everything you do by 50%, not just scales you out of the side content, but out of the main content as well. But I wanted to test this, and in order to do so, I decided to turn on the XP and resource boost for roughly 10 hours of gameplay early on. I figured, what's the worst that could happen? I blast through the opening stages and side content on the England map, and then I can turn it off for the rest of the run and continue about my merry way. However, within 2 or 3 hours, I started to notice an issue. Regularly, whenever you would level up, you would be awarded 2 batches, sometimes 3 batches of skill points. So instead of applying 2 to the skill tree, you now have 6 to apply. Doesn't sound like an issue, but when you're leveling up every 15 minutes or so, this gets pretty ridiculous. The result was that I was regularly 25 to 50% overpowered for the area I was in. By the end of this 10-hour test, I was 55% over-leveled above the recommended level for the area. This made all combat an absolute joke, and as a result, I needed to turn the difficulty all the way up to make the game even slightly interesting or challenging. Now, thankfully, they took out the scaling XP modifier for difficulty levels that they had in Odyssey. Basically, in Odyssey, if you were playing on the highest difficulty, you got more XP versus if you were playing on normal. So playing on higher had a reward to it. The issue, though, was that when people were using the XP boost, they were getting out-leveled above the content they were engaging with, so they raised the difficulty to make the game engaging and still fun somewhat, but that gave them even more XP points, which in turn exacerbated the issue and made it go up exponentially. In Valhalla, they took that out, so now that difficulty doesn't affect XP. But still, it's not enough to save the game once it's this out of whack. You see, when you out-level NPCs by that much, there just isn't much that you can do. The result was that after turning off all of the XP boosts, feeling as though I had successfully completed my test, my character was almost permanently outleveled for all of the areas I was within, only reaching equilibrium with the recommended levels by the end of the game in Winchester. If I had left the XP boost on permanently, I can only imagine how ridiculously high leveled I would have been by the end of the game, and how mind-numbingly boring the game would have been. And this is the broader point. It's one thing if Ubisoft wants to offer players the ability to bypass the admittedly lackluster side content. There are some gems in here, but for the most part, the small dynamic quests of Odyssey are completely absent, replaced with quick treasure hunts and collectathons. But it's an entirely different issue when you realize that this XP boost doesn't just bypass the side content, but the main content too. The game literally ruins itself. And it just furthers my belief that so little of this game was actually thought through. Maybe it was the pandemic, maybe it was all of the scandals, the fact that Ubisoft had to fire the game's director. I mean, he wasn't fired, he resigned, but he was, I'm sure, welcomed to resign, if that makes sense. Maybe it was all of that caused the game to feel so disjointed. It didn't receive the final polish or the final pass by the original vision holder. That could be it. But so much of the game just doesn't work well with itself at all. It's incohesive. It just butts heads with itself constantly. And it's baffling. Because just a little while ago, with Odyssey, they didn't have these issues. It was massive, it was bloated, sure, but at least it worked fairly well. There were occasionally exploits, like the one with the XP and the XP booster, when you went on higher difficulties, but they patched that out, they fixed it. This just doesn't make sense. In my opinion, Assassin's Creed Valhalla is poorly thought through. Almost every feature and design element fights itself, resulting in an experience that feels bland, bloated, and uninspired. And the true tragedy is that thanks to Ubisoft's increased sales numbers and the millions and millions of copies that Valhalla sold, it's unlikely that Ubisoft will change any of this. If anything, the next entry will make the same mistakes and result in the same rushed, poorly thought through, and often baffling design choices. It's really sad to say, and I'll explain it and express it in a lot of detail in that upcoming critique, but it seems to me as though Valhalla at this point is one of, if not the worst game in the series. And it's sad to see, but it's probably more of the same moving forward. I honestly want to hear your thoughts as to how the game got like this and why they cut side quests. Like, why? If it's not broke, don't fix it. Like, you fixed it with something way worse. Like, that's not how you fix stuff. Drop them in the comment section below, tweet them at Luke Stevens TV, or feel free to send me a letter at my freshly opened P.O. box down below. You can also check out my Discord, which I'll have linked below as well, and my Twitch, where we're going to be streaming a lot more moving forward since I just went full-time on YouTube again, so rock and roll. I mean, I guess it's full-time on YouTube and Twitch, but you get my drift. I'll look forward to seeing you over there. I love you all more than you could possibly know. Hugs and kisses. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.